Hello, my literaries. I'm coming at you a little vlog style right now. Just hoping that everyone is starting their morning off or starting their day off with patience, with joy, with intention, and most importantly, the intention to be kind to yourself and to just enjoy what you can enjoy. I'm enjoying my cup of coffee right now. That's like one of the things that like really gets me through the day. Like I do not play with my coffee. I'm also coming to you all vlog style to tell you a little bit about why I chose this book by Bell Hooks, all about love, other than the fact that like I love love and I would definitely consider myself the hopeless romantic type. But anytime a Black woman talks about love, I have to listen and I have to give it my attention and I have to share it, because Black women, we are so loving and we love everyone through everything. So getting straight into the video, I'm on my beanbag. I have my book right here, but I will be reading off of my computer. This is the edition that I have. This is the only edition that I have seen, and I'm not sure if there are more. So when I refer to page numbers, this is the book that I am talking about. Cool. So something that stood out to me in the book was the overall introduction, and that's titled Grace Touched by Love. And I love the pun again, and I really enjoyed the quote that Hooks puts in there by author Jack Kornfield. And he says, quote, "It is possible to speak with our hearts directly. Most ancient cultures know this. We can actually converse with our hearts as if it were a good friend. In modern life, we have become so busy with our daily affairs and thoughts that we have lost this essential art of taking time to converse with our heart." End quote. I like this quote because it is a universally spiritual way of looking at getting to know the quiet parts of ourselves. And conversing with my heart for me looks like having a conversation with God, who knows my heart. And I take time out of my day every day to talk to God, to be honest with God, to be intentional with God. Here, intentional, that's the theme, always. To be intentional and to talk to God like He is my best friend, like I'm spilling all of the tea and I'm going into the conversation with no limits. And in doing that, I am creating a space where I can reevaluate the things that are happening in my life to see if they actually align with what's inside of me, and I can grow from that. So whether or not you believe in God or not, that's none of my business, but really I'm just talking about creating space, creating time to get to know ourselves better. And I wholeheartedly agree with Kornfield that conversing with your hearts is an essential art, because it creates a foundation, an internal foundation that can be used externally. The more that we know ourselves, the better we are out in the world. For us even to have this discussion about love, we have to know ourselves better. We have to understand really what is working internally, what is guiding us internally, what is happening spiritually, because love is so deep. It's not just movies, it's not just Disney. It is something that is working on a level that a lot of us haven't tapped into, and a lot of us struggle with tapping into. And that's another thing that I loved about this introduction, because Hooks talks about what love means in our society. And she says that there are not many public discussions of love in our culture right now. And even though this book was written, it was published in the early 2000s, I definitely think that this still stands true. We don't have a culture of love. So sometimes it makes it harder for us to tap in to what's working on that deeper level. I think there has been a huge push to treat ourselves kindly and practice self-care, but sometimes it's a little superficial, right? Do a face mask and fix your life kind of thing. But love between people, love in a community, love globally hasn't been discussed so openly, in my opinion, unless something devastating happens. It's not constant, it's not flowing, it doesn't always exist just to exist. And instead, it's replaced by power dynamic, rules, regulations, circumstance, and social media, instant culture, and things like fast fashion that are so overwhelming sometimes and so binding and they create a spirit of confusion. And I think that because we don't live in a culture of love, it's important to get to know ourselves, because then when we get to know ourselves, we understand that we don't have to subscribe to ways of operating that hurt us, because we can find strength in who we are, not what culture is or not what culture is doing. We can separate ourselves a little bit more from culture because we have a moral compass that we go by, not what they go by. And I also love the concept of looking inside, because the stronger you are as an individual, the more you can influence the community. The more you know inside, the more you understand inside, the more you can influence outside. So maybe we don't have this culture of love now, but maybe if we work on it on an individual level, we will have a culture of love soon. So also in this introduction, what really stood out to me was that Hooks advises us to have a shared definition of love. She wants us to, yes, look inside, but she also wants us to find common ground in what it means to act within love. She really wants us to get back to the basics, actually. She wants us to ask ourselves, is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it a choice? How will we show it? How would we like to receive it? And on page 14, she says, definitions are vital starting points for the imagination. What we cannot imagine cannot come into being. And as a daydreamer, this really made me think, because I spend so much of my time imagining far and distant things. And yes, that is so important, because there are some people who cannot dream of another way. And I'm so thankful that I can use my imagination to think big. But maybe I should also use my imagination to think small, think specific, think daily, right? And maybe apply that to love. Yes, of course, I want to follow love, and I want to have a family, and I want to go on vacation with my family, all of those things. I definitely want that fairy tale, but also I do want to love every day. I want to have meaningful family moments every day. And when I think about saying that instead, it helps me be a little more present. What are the meaningful family moments that I'm having now, instead of waiting for them to come? in the future. What's interesting about what Hooks is saying is that she's kind of encouraging us to use our imagination to become more realistic. Is that defining love is important because the act of loving doesn't actually come as natural to us as we think. And we learn to receive affection and care as babies. We learn to respond to a caretaker. If our basic needs are met, we're like, wow, this person loves me. But she says that these are only the ingredients and they are not the full picture. And she says that we start out committed to the right path, but we go in the wrong direction. And her prime example of us having committed to the right path, but going in the wrong direction is cathecting. And this was a new word for me. I was like, what is a cathecting? So cathecting means investing feelings or emotions in someone. And she supports her claim with M. Scott Peck's self-help book, The Road Less Traveled, that claims we tend to confuse cathecting with love. And at first, I was like, well, duh. But the scary thing here is that when you make an investment, you want to see something in return. And I don't think that love always works like that. I've been thinking, and love has layers to it. And one of the base levels is like the Corinthians kind. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, it does not boast. That kind. The type that just exists. The bond that just exists. It's unbreakable, it's there, it's dancing, it's moving, it's free. Love is free on that biblical level. But at the same time, there's another level on top of that foundation that is a set of expectations and set of boundaries. So please don't confuse what I'm saying with not setting expectations or boundaries with your partner in intimate relationships, because actions are very important when it comes to commitment. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to think critically about how we would like to be loved and what makes us feel respected, and have a conversation between the people that we already have that foundation of love with. The foundation is not enough. The bond is not enough. Right here with Hooks on saying, you know what? Let's get rid of investment in relationship, that concept of investment, because that results in, when it doesn't work out, I wasted my time instead of I learned valuable lessons. Let me take my growth somewhere else and learn another lesson. Instead of investment, she gives us nurture. Instead of I put in this, so I expect this. And I guess that kind of means be a little bit more flexible at love. And I know that that's very hard for me as someone who likes to control situations. I don't want to be flexible. I don't. But Hooks is really persuasive. And that I thought was very profound in this chapter was that love and abuse cannot coexist. She says that on page 6. And then she goes on to say that too many of us cling to a notion of love that either makes abuse acceptable or at least make it seem that whatever happened was not that bad. And I think about this in terms of like a parent or guardian, because I think this is where it's very hard to do, to say this person loves me, but that was not an act of love. But it's very necessary to do. You can't make a person all good. You can't make a person all bad, right? I think this is actually a time where we need to compartmentalize a little bit and say, this is when a person shows that they love me, and this is when a person is showing that. And this is a time when someone was not in an act of love. So my literaries, these are the things that stood out to me, and I really would love to hear what you all have to say. Kisses.